Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final day. The final day, David? Yes. Welcome to the final day of Progressive Army inauguration and post inauguration coverage. I am your host, Brandon Sutton, and joining me again is the lovely David Grossman. Say hello, David.
Hello, David.
You got it right this time. Perfect. Thank you. Um, Before we get started with the clips and with the other stuff going on the ground in DC, let me offer a correction. I was wrong in stating that Betsy DeVos was confirmed on Friday, last Friday. I misread an article that said it had been moved from this Tuesday to Friday, but it's the upcoming Friday, obviously. She will be up for confirmation on the upcoming Friday. There is a petition on MoveOn.org to have her confirmation blocked. Of course, you may always call your senator, your congressman, etc., etc. I cannot stress enough that Betsy DeVos is, and I'm butchering her name, and I've heard it said before a bunch of times, but I don't want to butcher her name, uh, is the worst mix of Christian fundamentalist and capitalist that, or sorry, neoliberal that you could imagine. She believes that our formal education system is a problem because it has replaced the church in the community as the center for socializing children, etc. She is a advocate for the school choice movement, which is just a fancy way of saying she wants to advocate tax dollars to charter schools and and sectarian schools. So call your senator, sign a petition, do what you can to help. Let it be known that you are not in favor of a religious fanatic being in favor, being heading the education department and instilling her, religious zealotry upon students. So yeah, that is my correction. I apologize for any confusion.
Well, we always want to be accurate, and if we make mistakes, we correct them and make
Oh
sure
yeah,
that we're giving the facts, the correct information.
people make mistakes, and I mean the substance is there. She is in fact a very dangerous choice, and it's hard. And honestly, when you're looking at Donald Trump's cavalcade of evil, it's hard to decide who is the most dangerous. Where do we focus our attention? Right, between Tillerson and Sessions and DeVos and just with my god other one. There's just so many. There's so much bad there, right? There's so much bad. Oh, Carson. There's so much bad there, and it's hard to target. And in a lot of ways, the Democratic Party, these hearings give the illusion that something is being done, like that they're being confronted, and they provide great clips, right? So we've seen clip after clip these answers that they're giving. The grizzly bear answer was got popular. Rex Tillerson not being able to account for climate. I'm sorry, not being able to account for Exxon's role in disseminating faux climate change information. The head of the choice for head of the EPA denying that climate change is real. Like all of these things are coming out, right? And they kind of give that illusion. We see this too with the hearings for Wells Fargo and the hearings that we have with a lot of Elizabeth Warren's hearings in this way too, where people get this this sort of symbolic confrontation of these issues, but confirmed anyway, right? So I don't know. I really don't know. But when it comes to stuff like this, don't get don't go to sleep on this one. That's what I'm trying to say. Really, don't look at these people being embarrassed in front of Congress, in front of at their hearings, and think that the problem is solved, because ultimately that's a very small price to pay for getting and becoming head of the EPA.
Yeah, definitely. While you were discussing that amongst yourself, I was showing some pictures of the some of the marches that took place yesterday. Um, Largely it was in DC, but that I showed on screen. But there were marches all over, and just to give an idea, I think we'll break away to a short. I think this is a 2 or 3 minute video, just showing some of the marches. I don't think it even covers all, but some of the marches that took place around around the globe, and then we can take it from there. Give me 1 second and I will get that on screen.
I can't see what's on your screen, so it's going to be hard for me to.
I haven't shared my screen with you, have I? Well, I'll do that briefly in a moment. But let me get it on screen for our audience first. Here it is.
Okay. Sorry about there, folks, but I can't see what you're seeing, and I don't want to comment without it being relevant to whatever's to the left, whatever's to the right of me.
You'll comment afterwards. After.
I'll comment afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday, so I mean, there has been a lot of obviously the women's march was yesterday, right? So there has been a lot of. Okay, so we at the Progressive Army are not afraid of going against the common narrative. I think it's safe to say, right, David? We're not afraid of being the outlier when it comes to what people in the mainstream media are saying.
Not one bit. Not one bit.
And so don't take my stumbling and apprehension about addressing this topic as fear, but I am recognizing that this is a ginger thing to say, and I'm going to try to address it in as nuanced a way as possible to avoid being unnecessarily offensive, although I recognize that it is going to be at least, by necessity, it's going to be at least a little bit offensive to a lot of people.
We'll leave that on a cliffhanger so that we can cover that when we get back from this clip. This comes courtesy, and you should be able to see my screen now.
I can.
Brandon. This comes courtesy of Sarah Mixer on YouTube, and it is the marches that happened around the world yesterday. So we'll go off to this. to you, Brandon, but I will say that I definitely understand. Let me pause that. I definitely think that I understand. I don't think I do. I understand the mixed emotions surrounding everything that happened yesterday, um, the purpose of the march, what was behind it. I get it, and my feeling is that regardless of why it was started, I think that if it brought other issues and purposes into the forefront, if it involved others, which clearly it did, because it wasn't just in Washington, it wasn't just even in the states, it was around the world. So it involved people that are concerned not just with the United States. I think that that's a bigger picture.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay, so you're going to provide a counterbalance to when I start talking trash about this, and because you're going to provide the like, you can be my foil here. Uh, I am I am dubious about this whole thing, right? So from what I've heard, or not from what I know, this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this march wasn't planned until after Trump lost, right?
I
I mean, after
actually,
Trump won.
I actually think it was. I could be getting confused with another event, because it was discussed inside Progressive Army earlier this morning. But I think again, I could be wrong. I think it started in April. The planning. I'm not positive on that.
See, okay, so that goes against what I've heard. See, so I might be wrong, and so I won't go down that line of thinking. From what I heard, this was the only march that was, in fact, had trouble getting. They had a relative amount of trouble getting permits, because it was planned later than all of the other protests, right? And so, just in that little clip that we saw a lot of anti-Trump signs, a lot of signs that are generally in favor of an amorphous notion of women's rights, a lot of passion there, and don't get me wrong, it's great, it's great. Millions and millions of people, not just women, millions of people worldwide were protesting, but I am unmoved by the ability of people to recognize a monster and protest a monster, but nothing really else. And I'm not saying that's what was going on there, because like you're right, people were the Women's March was about a lot of things, right? So the Women's March was about a lot of things, but even within that, like that little clip, and from like a lot of the pictures I've seen demonstrated, it's being presented as this sort of big anti-Trump movement, and by necessity, that says to me, it appears to be some sort of big DNC movement, right? Like it I feel like this is going to be mobilized by the Democratic establishment to share some sort of illusion of energy surrounding them, and not just a general dissatisfaction with the system. And that needs to be so, like the stuff going on Friday was very, very obviously, and we talked about this with Michael Salomon, an anti-status quo, like sorry, not collaboration, a coalition of people getting out there and protesting not simply Trump, but the status quo. So we had people from Flint protesting the fact they didn't have clean water. We had people out there on Friday who recognized the necessity to protest one, like, because what they were protesting was simply, America is in a very bad situation from a structural standpoint, racially, economically, gender wise, etc. And so when I look at this sort of stuff now, I feel like, how big would this Women's March be if Hillary Clinton actually won? And how much of this Women's March is simply how much of this energy is going to be siphoned away by the DNC to justify another neoliberal pick in 2020? And so, again, this is not me criticizing the people at the Women's March, right? So everyone has their right to be angry. Everyone has the right to be dissatisfied. And if it took Trump for you to realize that there works, I think you've been asleep for a long time, right? So like, okay, so if it took us to get to Trump for you to realize that America has problems with racism and sexism and homophobia, then you've been asleep at the wheel for going on 30, well, really since, well, forever, right? You've just been asleep at the wheel, and Trump has simply burst your bubble. And hey, okay, fair enough. But where do you go from there? So like the problem becomes we can't let Trump, these people, we can't let the DNC rather co-opt this energy. And what we heard from Michael Solomon yesterday, there were very few people out there who were, you know, clipboards, rather, for lack of a better term, we had very few clipboards on the ground when it came time to organize for things that are not basically a DNC. I mean, the DNC wasn't really organizing either, but the point is this: it's like, is this actually the start of a movement, or is this one big symbolic gesture? Like, is the Women's March going to be is this energy that we saw yesterday going to be used for the right things, which I would argue would be a larger progressive, larger leftist attack on the status quo, or is it simply going to be used for the DNC, for MSNBC, for like basically the liberal establishment to pretend like people are supporting them? Because I saw a lot of signs out there. Okay, so there's two things, right? I saw a lot of signs out there that were anti-DNC. So I have friends who were out in New York City out protesting, and some of my friends that I saw a lot of anti-Putin signs, and a lot of just basically anti-Russian propaganda signs. That's disheartening. But I also saw a lot of anti signs, like a lot of people blaming Nancy Pelosi, blaming David Wasserman Schultz, blaming Chuck Schumer for where we got. Blaming. I saw a lot of anti-Hillary Clinton signs. That's great.
So,
But I also
go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, but at the same time, I also had a friend tell me in NYC she heard they were singing the national anthem. And it's just like that. So that's where it becomes problematic, right? Where this women's march is, some of the parts are not addressing the actual root causes. They're just dissatisfaction with the fact that Hillary Clinton did not win. And if you're out there singing the national anthem, I'm like, what? Like, come on, guys, come on. Like this is like, a protest is a tool. It is not the movement in and of itself. It's just one tool, and it's one tool. But what were you going to say?
I definitely, I'm not completely a foil to your view. I think that it's a very it took me a lot of time to even process how to feel, and I sort of understand where Michael Solomon was coming off. He tweeted last night several tweets, and I think a thread, in fact, that really summed it up. It's like the primary happened, and those problems haven't stopped, haven't gone away, haven't disappeared. We can't just turn a blind eye and, okay, new president, let's start over. That's not happening. And so I definitely hear what you're saying, especially depending on what the marches were about and what's going to happen today, tomorrow, and going forward. I put up a picture just now on screen that sums up similar thoughts. The poster he's holding says, I'll see you nice white ladies at the next Black Lives Matter march," right? And that's only focusing on one point, but it goes much broader in that.
Absolutely. You're right. So no, Fisher's point. I'm gonna go off that.
I was just gonna say, I think that the question is what happens going forward. What happened yesterday was, it was huge in terms of numbers, and I don't think that it was only Trump, but I do think that much of it was, and unfortunately, the power of media, especially mainstream, because there's just no denying we can all do what we do, but mainstream is still mainstream and has the farthest reach, at least right now, and for the foreseeable future. And so the Russian narrative, the storylines about Russia tampering has dominated, and it's not just in America. Even if we're being laughed at in that regard around the world, it still has reached there to the point where people that aren't in Russia are still looking at it as Trump versus Russia, or Trump and Russia versus the rest. And I think that we have to be careful about how we, just jump on the bandwagon, but at the same time understand that there's real potential here.
Well, so what I don't want to do is mischaracterize this march as basically, you know, white women's march for neoliberalism, because it's very easy to see it that way, right? It's very easy to say like, okay, it's very easy to say like this is a pro Hillary, pro DNC march. It's a, it's AstroTurf march. Uh, it's obfuscating the fact that there are deep, deep problems in the DNC, but that's not true, right? That's like the level of engagement of the people at this march is different. Like, so you have people out there who are simply just anti-Trump protesters. Then you have people who are anti-GOP protesters. You have people who are just who are anti-establishment protesters, and it goes on and on and on. But so the problem becomes like, the mainstream media can co-opt this, right? Like the mainstream media can co-opt this all this energy into itself and present it as though, well, like, you see, the DNC party is not dead, and frankly, it is. And so, how like, a lot of it comes across as a symbolic gesture to me. So, in protesting, and a lot has become, in recent years, I would say, a symbolic gesture for a lot of people. It's something that you do to take some pictures with some signs, post them on your Instagram, and then go home. And the reason you can go home is because rhetorical changes in America, your life has not actually really changed. And so we've reached this point now where, yeah, 2 million people marched. Great, great. But where are you gonna be in 2018?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, I think that is the key question. What is going to happen beyond? And we don't have the answer to that, but we're not just. But the other thing is, don't just watch to see what happens. And I'm not saying this to you, Brandon. I'm just saying this in general. While we're saying are all these people going to be, we should also be asking ourselves, right? We should also be in general, who's going to do
Well,
what going forward.
absolutely, and we should also be informing people of what the real problem is. Like, that's why we're here right now, right? Because we're acting as the counter narrative to the mainstream media, who only really has the illusion of diversity, right? The Democratic Party and the Democratic and liberal establishment simply has the illusion of diversity, but they have the monopoly on it in the mainstream. So what they want to do is they want to turn this all this energy, all this undirected energy, into a new resurgence of the Democratic Party. They want to say, look, all these people out there, all these oppressed people are marching all because they don't like Trump, and they want to all this energy. Perfect. But so it becomes incumbent upon us to say, yeah, great. So Trump woke you up. Like Trump is finally what it took to wake up all of you neoliberals, all of you people who live in your liberal bubble, who, make enough money a year, who don't really recognize all of the problems that exist in America as it comes to race and sexism. For people who don't look like you, Trump finally woke you up to say, oh my gosh, things are bad. So, no judgment, but we have to go out there and say, yes, but it's not simply Trump. Trump is just the canary in the coal mine. We have a larger problem in America, right? The problem is really Hillary Clinton as well. The problem is that Hillary Clinton is like, she's indicative of the structural causes that led to Trump. We can't go back to the Democratic Party. We can't simply go back to the precursor to Trump, because then in 8 years we'll be doing this again. Well, like, we have to break out of the cycle. And the cycle is simply one of, igniting the movement, and then suddenly everyone goes back to sleep. What are you showing now? I can't see. I can't really read that.
So that's a thread from Michael Salamone. I'm gonna read it in case other people can't. I'm imagining that it's just a little blurred on the screen that you're looking at because of what we use. But essentially, and there's one other tweet that isn't in this thread that he did afterwards, but he basically surmises decently, as he usually does. Solomon said, I'm all over the place with feelings for the Women's March. Hated the Clinton propaganda, loved turnout and passions ignited. The latter wins. Without true atonement for sins of the primary, Democrats are still doomed. Still, politics is about getting bodies out, women represented. America's challenge is to amplify from today. This sound must be sustained and amplified to resonate. Revolution is still a go. And then there's another one, if I can find it. Uh,
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
he
he
laid it
laid it
out
out
there
there
perfectly,
perfectly,
right?
right?
That the Clinton propaganda is part of the problem. It's not the solution.
I have it on
And
the
so,
screen now, just before you respond. He said, I haven't forgotten the primary or DNC, but I am coming around to this point of view. Like Michael Jackson saying, we're going to be starting something. And he was responding to the New Deal on Twitter that said it has to start somewhere, it has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better place time than now?
definitely. So like it's incumbent upon us to help people recognize that the Clinton propaganda was part of the problem, and she's not the solution. Tim Kaine is not the solution. The Democratic Party is not the solution to Trump. Like they're part of the problem. Like Trump is not a GOP, so it's not solely a GOP creation. It's a creation of the establishment. It's Trump represents the logical conclusion of a racist fascist state. Like we end up in a cartoonish excess. Too often when it comes down to neoliberals and people who live in that liberal bubble, they only recognize the problem once it gets too bad. And then their solution is simply, well, let's put a band-aid on it and go back to the way things were when the status quo was more palatable. But because let's be honest, the status quo hasn't really changed, and it's not really going to change under Trump, right? Like this, we just come back to a larger conversation we were having yesterday about will there be a market difference under Trump? A substantial difference in the way Black people are treated, and the way women are treated, and the way poor, and economic mobility. In terms of economic mobility, will there be a market rhetorical change? Probably. I mean, I think we've seen that already, right? That the president, the commander in chief has a loose tongue on Twitter. He is reckless in his language, but when it comes down to the actual ways in which our infrastructure and our institutions are structured, will there be more police violence? Will there be less economic mobility? Will there be sort of market way? And I mean, the answer is no. Like at least from my perspective, it won't be a market difference. People will feel like there is.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I said it on Twitter yesterday. This whole the resistance banner that people are going behind. Social media, it's a hashtag, but in general, there's a show by being made. There's propaganda being put out there using it. I refuse to stand behind it, and this point kind of connects to this whole thing with the march. I refuse to utilize that banner for the simple fact that regardless of who created it, because there's a lot of different claims about who did it and people saying they did it, etc. It's been at the very least co-opted by the Democratic Party, by the DNC, and by the establishment, and they're doing so in order to in an attempt to move forward with business as usual, to continue their game of pretending to stand up for something but not really doing so, and that's just not going to work anymore. And one of the things I've said on social media is I have absolutely nothing against those using the banner that are putting their efforts into legitimately trying to fight and put their effort into these causes.
Well, I mean, I do. Like, I have if you are fighting, let's make very clear. We're the Progressive Army. Like, if you are part of the quote unquote resistance, the Keith Olbermann, Rachel Maddow, David Brock, we're going to fight. We're going to fight neo-fascism with Democratic Party neoliberalism. Then in my position, though rhetorically you are on my side, in actuality you are, you're part of the problem, and we are enemies. And so, like, I mean, that may sound harsh, but that's just the way things have to be in terms of actually getting things done. Like, we can't get in bed with the Democratic Party. We can't get in bed with these people who don't want to actually solve the problem. They just want to turn back the clock to right before, basically the bomb exploded, and keep us on edge. They just want us to live on the edge. And that's what the Democratic Party wants, right? They want to have us on the economic precipice, but never falling off that cliff.
And I agree if with regard to the people you're speaking of. I think that there are many that are using the resistance, and I'm not talking about people with significant reach and high profiles like the Obermans and the politicians. Um, I'm referring to just regular activists or citizens that are just falling behind it. And if their cause is not just going along with what they're hearing and saying, but they see value in using that, as long as their cause is in line with what we're with what the type of in the context that we're talking about, that's more or less what I'm saying. I'm not going to look down on those that, regardless of the slogan that one uses. It's really about what they're really doing.
Absolutely. So like I don't care much for language in terms of defining ourselves, but it is what it is. But there's an issue with the rank and file Democrat, right? There's an issue with the rank and file Democrat in that they have drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm going to compare it to the Matrix, right? So the Democratic Party is basically the Matrix, and the rank and file Democrat are the people who exist within the Matrix, who can be used as agents of the Democratic Party, who can be used as agents of the establishment to be mobilized against the, like, for lack of a better word, those who have taken the red pill and are awoken, or what does the red pill to make a difference, and recognize that the system itself is just that. It's a system. It's meant to keep us enslaved in some way, which, and so yes, they're not like, so do I have a vehement hatred of the rank and file Democrat? Your rank and file still with her, Clinton, please save us from Trump. I'm going to miss Obama because he was so cool. Democrat? No. Do I think that they are part of the problem? Yes, because for those people, if I have a feeling that they are very able to, they are very capable of recognizing I'll put it this way, those people are very capable of recognizing the faults that exist in themselves on the right. But when it comes time to, look in the mirror, Michael Jackson looked at the man in the mirror, they don't see those faults in themselves. So people laugh when Republicans don't know that the ACA is the same as Obamacare, and they want to repeal it. And it's so funny because they're so uninformed, and how could they be so uninformed? But I have a feeling those same Democrats, if you went to them and said, hey, Trump is planning on deporting 2.5 million illegal immigrants or undocumented workers. 100,000 of those, or 30,000 of them rather, are children who are seeking asylum from the dangerous drug war. Like, how do you feel about that? They would go, well, Trump is a monster, and I can't believe he'd do that. Like, oh, actually, that was Obama, right? That was actually Obama. And they would go, I don't believe you. I didn't know. How could you say that? It's so, like, they're just not, it's not they're not savvy enough. They're an obstacle to be getting over. So, like, we'll put it that way, in more value neutral term. Like, they're an obstacle. Like, your rank and file Democrat, your rank and file, semi-engaged Twitter follower who's tweeting Russian propaganda and like tweeting pictures of Putin grabbing Trump by the balls. Like, they're an obstacle to actual success for progressives. And if they cannot be taken in, they have to be overcome.
Sorry, sometimes a delay in switching screens to unmute myself, and as I'm sure people that are listening can tell, when I'm talking, there's a change in quality because I don't have the legit type of equipment that Brandon over there has, the professional microphone and all. But so I keep myself muted otherwise. But I would agree with you. I would agree, and the biggest thing is, I think we have to be careful to choose our battles. And so I'm just looking at the broader picture. I think we have to give it a chance to see what things are like going forward. If everyone just quiets down, goes home, and just goes back to tweeting, and,
Oh no, no,
bashing
I agree.
Trump, then there's nothing to do about that. Then it's a lost cause, and it's it's on us, and we don't have these people as our allies. We can cross them off. But
Oh, definitely.
go ahead. And then there's a
This
couple
is
of
about
things.
No, no, you can leave your mic. I'm gonna just say this is about retention rate, right? This is about like actual retention rate of those 2 million people. And let me be very clear: over 80% of those women who march are gonna take their pictures, post them on their dating sites, post them on their Twitter feed, post them on their Facebook. And it's gonna be a way to signal that they did something and that they're engaged. But at the end, 2 weeks from now, they'll be living their lives the same as it was before. And so they will have done very little but make themselves feel good. And then that's what it is. But I mean, that's what a vote for Clinton was, right? It was a feel-good vote. The same way they criticized the vote for Jill Stein as a feel-good vote. That's what a vote for Clinton was too. It was a vote in favor of the status quo, and it was a feel-good vote because it was what it was. But continue your point.
No, I think we're pretty much in line for the most part. I'm just trying to give, I don't think that regardless of the inspiration and the reason that it came together. And again, I have to kind of fact check to see when it started. I haven't even looked at the chat to see if anyone helped us with that answer. But I think that the more important part is what comes out of it. And the fact that it wasn't just in DC is there's more to it. If this wasn't a one-time thing, if people start to get involved, that's what we need. What I'm going to go to, there's two speeches that one I didn't hear, one I heard portions of that sort of stood out. One is by Janelle Monáe. Some may or may not know her. She's an artist, a singer. And then one is Angela Davis, and I know that there's some mixed opinions of her, especially after the primary. But I thought I'd play these two. We'll do it. We won't do it two in a row because one's 5 and one's 7 minutes long. But Brandon and I can go get some water to clear our throat, and we'll come back after Monáe.
Hello, future. I'm so proud to stand here as a woman, an African-American woman. My grandmother was a sharecropper. She picked cotton in Aberdeen, Mississippi. My mother was a janitor, and I am a descendant of them, and I am here in their honor to help us move forward and fem the future. I just want to say, I want to remind you that it was woman that gave you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was woman that gave you Malcolm X. And according to the Bible, it was a woman that gave you Jesus. Don't you ever forget it. And we must remind them, those who are abusing their power. That is what I am here today to march against, the abuse of power. I want to say to the LGBTQ community, my fellow brothers and sisters, to immigrants, my fellow brothers and sisters, to women, continue to embrace the things that make you unique, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You are enough. And whenever you feel in doubt, whenever you want to give up, you must always remember to choose freedom over fear. I come here again as an American and as a woman, not as an artist. When I go home, I have the same concerns. When I see bullies trying to bully you, just know that I am upset about it, and it does not go unnoticed. The things that are happening from Washington to even other Americans abusing their power and abusing others will be hidden no more. Women will be hidden no more. We will not remain hidden figures. We have names. We're complete human beings, and they cannot police us, so get off our areolas. vaginas. Again, we birthed this nation, and we can unbirth a nation if we choose. We can stop completely if we choose. This is about unity, and I want to bring on stage some more American women and men saying beauty, Jadena, and the mothers of the movement. As I talk about the abuse of power, it's not just happening here in Washington. It has also happened on the ground in the police force. We have amazing cops, we have amazing Americans, but again, we are here to fight against the abuse of power and to unite and to remind us all that at the end of the day, we all pee the same color. And we must protect each other. We must protect one another. So this is a song, music that we wrote, not for ourselves, but for you. Make some noise if you're going to continue to be out there on the front lines. This is a song.
They won't.
That is a vessel, and this is a tool for you to take out as you march. This song is called Hell You Talking About. And we're talking about this right now because we must continue to exercise our voices. Some of us protest in silence, and some of us believe that silence is not an option, and music, our sound, is a weapon. No wrong way to do it. But this song is going to honor those who are victims due to the abuse of power. This is a chant, and for us to be one living, breathing organism, I need your help. Can I get you to sing with us? So it goes like this. It's a call and response. I'm going to use Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland, our sister Sandra Bland. So when I say, Sandra Bland, say her name. I'm going to say Sandra Bland, and you say her name. So one more time. Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name.
Yeah, so I think that type of thing, that type of context is important only because, not only, but because it's not just about women. Like the point she made before, and I wish she had put a little bit more emphasis on other things, but it was her speech, not mine, on the other injustices and other issues that we're facing that are only going to increase. The use of force. Trump's already, we know Trump's in favor of that. And, you know, the police state's already, you know, Obama helped build it further than Bush did. So it's there. I just wish that, you know, those things would have been put a little bit more to the forefront. But the fact that the focus is on those issues, and if only a small percentage of the people that attended these marches do dedicate some of their time to continuing forward, it will help.
Oh, definitely. And I think don't get me wrong. It's that, so like I said, if it took Trump to wake people up, okay, I would say you were asleep at the wheel. Fine. The problem becomes, though, we have a hyper-partisan, dichotomous political culture. So rallies like this, protests like this, which of course, a lot of energy, a lot of anti-Trump energy by nature of the way we do politics can be very easily be turned into pro-DNC energy and pro-Clinton energy. And so it's great if we have a march at an anti-Trump rally or sort of this larger anti-Trump movement, or Trump becomes indicative of a larger movement against the status quo, because people say, hey, look at this. This is where the status quo gets us. The status quo gets us to Trump. That's fine if that's the way this is being framed. But for this to be framed in a sort of way where it becomes, look how bad police violence got under Trump. we have to go back to Obama or Clinton or the Democrats, then that is a problem, right? Because it becomes like your prescription for the solution is more of the same environment that led to him in the first place. And so we have to make sure that people, when we talk about police violence, like you alluded to right there, that people understand both the breadth and the depth of racist infrastructure and structure of society. You don't only point to police violence and say, well, look at the structures of inequality in our society. You say, okay, well, yeah, police violence is very important, but also look at the unequal access to healthcare, unequal access to proper schooling, all the other ways in which the Black community are the victim of institutional racism. Look at, we can't hyper focus on the excesses, and police violence is one of those excesses. And we also can't hyper focus on Trump as though he created racism and say, well, look how bad things have gotten under Trump and only two. Like, no. That's not the way this works. That wasn't the way the debt crisis, the housing crisis worked under Obama. It's not the way the police violence, the way fascism works under Trump. Trump didn't invent fascism in America. And in a lot of ways, let's be honest, all this focus on what's going on in Washington, they ramped up the police presence and the violence at the No Dapple protest in Standing Rock at the exact same time. Let's let Trump be the catalyst for a larger movement aimed at equality for everyone. And let's not let Trump become a convenient scapegoat for the system itself.
Yeah. I think scapegoats are the biggest thing. Is how many people are truly awoken and how many people are just drinking the Kool-Aid and seeing this as the big thing to do right now because of Trump's scary words. No, not to say that what is on the Trump's agenda and the Republicans' agenda in general isn't huge, aren't huge problems, but use it, but just because it's the thing now, the in thing now, to stand up and say, dump Trump or any other catchy slogan, that's not helping. And we've seen that before. We continue to see that, and we've seen it before. And so that's what we need to get out of. I do think that a significant, that some have woken up. This election cycle was definitely unorthodox, but I don't really foresee what we've grown accustomed to in previous election cycles returning necessarily. But the question is, how many people are still going to be in it long term?
Well, was it unorthodox, right? Like was it actually that crazy? It felt crazy when you were in it. But in hindsight, if you've been paying attention to the economic and material conditions of society, the way popular culture has been trending, the way liberalism has been being sold to us through the media, the slow decay of the journalism in America, it's not that surprising, right? Is it? It was what's a good word for it? It was a spectacle. Absolutely. It was definitely spectacular in that way. But surprising, no. I think there's a very clear genealogy of how we got to where we got to. We could talk about the fairness doctrine being stripped out of the media, FCC regulations on media conglomerates being stripped out, so that we only have six big media corporations that control everything, and who put profit over actually informing the populace. We could talk about the chummy ways, we could talk about access journalism becoming the way of the land. Democrats going further and further to the right till it becomes impossible to determine who is the lesser two evils. The Republicans going crazy like this. Trump is not that out of the bounds of plausibility. He's not, and that's why he won, because everyone in the establishment bubble pretended like he was out of the bounds of plausibility, like he was just a flash in the pan, an anomaly. But like it's quite like I think that this is just the logical conclusion of where we've been going for the past 30 years. Nothing Trump has said or done has been so far deviant from where we have been. I don't like. We were like the past 20 or 30 years have inoculated us to identity politics because every time someone said anything relevant against Barack Obama, people pretended there was racism. The Democratic Party, while in control of the state, in control of the country, did nothing to combat the economic conditions that led to the collapse of the working class, the middle class. They did nothing to deal with the the segregation of our races. Like it's not that. I think that is a very convenient line of thinking, right? That Trump is anomalous, and that's a very dangerous line of thinking because he's not. He really isn't. Like the language he uses, the rhetoric that he uses is not even anomalous because there's been this demonization of what do you call it? Elitism within the elite as part of a strategy to, I don't know, to obfuscate the fact that they are in fact elite. It's just.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Well, no. What I was gonna say is when I said unorthodox, I didn't quite mean the tactics or the policy ideas or the language even for that matter. What I meant was it wasn't hidden any longer, and we can thank that either to we can thank it to hackers, we can thank it to WikiLeaks, we can thank it to people starting to use technology more to the advantage of the people, but it wasn't hidden. We could, you could now see the shenanigans. You can now see what was being done, at least to some degree, and so that it was no longer just a theatrical election where you had the star and stripe design on stage, people making nice speeches, and people going along with it. For once, the candidates were actually challenged, and they were clearly caught off guard. And you could tell, I think, by the crap of that might be called campaigns and the organizations that was run behind them. They were not prepared for what they would face because they're just used to the press doing their same old type of pushback and lip service, and they weren't ready for what we saw. That's really what I meant by unorthodox. Not to mention Trump. Trump is not a typical politician. He's, people are used to, talking points being read, people looking at a screen, reading what's in front of them, and that being that. Trump just goes off the cuff and talks nonsense, and it's abrasive nonsense. It's ugly nonsense, which I think made the climate that much different.
Well, I mean, so you make a good point there. So this electoral cycle, this past 8 months, a lot of things were really stripped bare for Americans, right? A lot of things became very, very clear, and it has to do with, hacking, but also just the proliferation of social media and independent media, and it became very hard to keep a narrative out there.
Exactly.
And Trump's ugliness is what won him the election, right? Trump was the candidate of grievance. Like, he revealed that there are a lot of people in America with varying levels of legitimate grievances, ranging from completely illegitimate to legitimate grievances with the status quo. And simply, this was a populist election. This was a populist election, and the Democratic Party, they chose the wrong candidate. They simply chose the wrong candidate in the worst way possible, in a very, very transparent appointment of the status quo. And when they did that, they basically doomed America. And that's why I say an anti-Trump rally is one thing, but we need to have more anti-DNC rallies, because they really put themselves and the Democratic establishment above everyone else in America. Because once you...
I would argue with it. I would not necessarily argue because I'm not sure of the answer, but I would pose this: do we need anti-DNC rallies and anti-DNC messaging, or do we need pushing the messaging to overtake the DNC's messaging? I think that you can do both, but I think that rather than just bashing the DNC and trying to tear them down, they're doing that on their own. Like, you know, they do the damage to themselves. I think that what's really badly needed is the showing of a new direction and a new not a narrative, because really we don't need anything scripted, but a new direction and new...
Well, here's the thing: people are looking, absolutely, but the thing is, people are looking for a solution to the problem that is Trump, that they perceive to be the problem, that Trump will act as the embodiment of all these problems, and the DNC wants to swoop in there and say, well, we are the solution to Trump. The Democratic Party is the solution. We're the resistance. We're the ones who you can rely on to defeat Trump. All we need is your vote. And so, to a certain extent, yes, we do have to tear DNC down a little bit. We have to point to the flaws in that argument, that they are somehow going to defeat Trump or resist Trump, or that they are the solution to Trump. Because the only way, not the only way really, but part of a progressive revolution is wresting control of the definition of the left from the DNC. They have a monopoly on being able to define what constitutes liberalism, to the point in which they felt very comfortable with demonizing democratic socialists and avowed democratic socialists for somehow being not liberal enough. He was sexist, you know, all of these sort of not really dog whistles, but like actual whistles, that he was somehow a fake liberal because he was not really a Democrat. And that to be not a fake liberal, he was not really on the left in a viable way because he's not a Democrat. And so, yes, part of the messaging of any serious third party, any serious person who wants to challenge, any serious group who want to challenge Trump is going to have to be, the Democrats are illegitimate. The Democratic Party is not a solution, it is a problem. And that may be harsh because there are definitely some people within the Democratic Party, both rank and file and politicians, speaking of both rank and file Democrats and politicians, who will be amenable to helping a progressive coalition or revolution, but the party itself is toxic. And so, yes, there does have to be anti-DNC marches. I mean, it's not, that wouldn't be that's not out of the ordinary so far, but yes, that does have to be part of the solution. We have to make people very aware that there is no solution to the issues that have become synonymous with Trump within the Democratic Party, because they existed before him and they will exist after him. Otherwise.
I feel you. I'm in agreement. I think we're gonna go over to what's her name?
Angela Davis.
Yes, thank you. Drew a blank there. Not when I'm multitasking, you know, the words don't come to me as quickly as Brandon.
It's been a long couple of days. So I mean, I apologize for the quality of the show today. It's been a long couple of days. We've done like about 10 hours in the past 3 days.
Yeah, something to that effect, especially when you take into account the work being done on the ground and the gathering. You know, we try not to do these shows on the fly. It's hard because, you know, this is all outside of anything else we do, but we try to prepare beforehand, and that takes time as well. Let's see where this speech is. Here it is, Angela Davis, and I'm curious because I know that she lives in Cuba, so I'm not quite sure how she got to DC. Because she's been in hiding, in exile for years, so I'm kind of...
That's not Angela Davis. That's not Angela. That's Asada Shakur.
Good thing that I was on mute.
Yeah, Angela Davis is you're thinking of Asada Shakur, I think. Like, Angela Davis is a very prominent activist in America. Like she was just a friend of mine was just at a conference with her a few weeks ago, actually.
Sure, I'll be giving some people in the chat a good laugh on that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Janae Ingram, head of logistics for the Women's March on Washington. Thank you for coming. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming to the stage the incomparable Angela Davis.
So, at this very challenging moment in our history, let us remind ourselves that we, the hundreds of thousands, the millions of women, trans people, men, and youth who are here at the Women's March, we represent the powerful forces of change that are determined to prevent the dying cultures of racism, heteropatriarchy from rising again. We recognize that we are collective agents of history and that history cannot be deleted like web pages. We know that we gather this afternoon on indigenous land. And we follow the lead of the first peoples who, despite massive genocidal violence, have never relinquished the struggle for land, water, culture, their people. We especially salute today the Standing Rock Sioux. The freedom struggles of Black people that have shaped the very nature of this country's history cannot be deleted with the sweep of a hand. We cannot be made to forget that Black lives do matter. This is a country anchored in slavery and settler colonialism, which means, for better or worse, the very history of the United States is a history of immigration and enslavement. Spreading xenophobia, hurling accusations of murder and rape, and building walls will not erase history. No human being is illegal. The struggle to save the planet, to stop climate change, to guarantee the accessibility of water from the lands of the Standing Rock Sioux to Flint, Michigan, to the West Bank and Gaza, the struggle to save our flora and fauna, to save the air, this is ground zero of the struggle for social justice. This is a women's march, and this Women's March represents the promise of feminism as against the pernicious powers of state violence. An inclusive and intersectional feminism. An inclusive and intersectional feminism that calls upon all of us to join the resistance to racism, to Islamophobia, to anti-Semitism, to misogyny, to capitalist exploitation. Yes, we salute the fight for 15. We dedicate ourselves to collective resistance. Resistance to the billionaire mortgage profiteers and gentrifiers. Resistance to the healthcare privateers. Resistance to the attacks on Muslims, on immigrants. Resistance to the attacks on disabled people. Resistance to state violence perpetrated by the police and through the prison industrial complex. Resistance to institutional and intimate gender violence, especially against trans women of color. I'm almost done. Women's rights are human rights all over the planet, and that is why we say freedom and justice for Palestine. We celebrate the impending release of Chelsea Manning and Oscar Lopez Rivera, but we also say free Leonard Peltier, free Mumia Abu Jamal, free Assata Shakur. Over the next months and years, we will be called upon to intensify our demands for social justice, to become more militant in our defense of vulnerable populations. Those who still defend the supremacy of white male heteropatriarchy had better watch out. The next 1,459 days of the Trump administration will be 1,459 days of resistance. Resistance on the ground, resistance in the classrooms, resistance on the job, resistance in our art and in our music. This is just the beginning. And in the words of the inimitable Ella Baker, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot said there, and I think that I think that there was a very long list of celebrities, and they do that type of thing. The bigger the event is, but I think that that's the kind of context that we need to look at this through, in hopes that that Trump is given hell and the DNC is given hell, and that the next 4 years and beyond isn't just the same old crap.
Exactly. I mean, Angela Davis, I almost called her Assata Shakur like you did, but Angela Davis, who I think lives in like Tennessee or Kentucky, but Angela Davis was masterful there, right? So she is trying to take that energy that exists in that crowd and channel it to the right things. Not just channel it to Trump. I don't even think she mentioned Trump that many times, at least when I was, listening. But like she pointed to individual issues and individual manifestations of state violence and the problem in America, and very rarely made them an issue of, well, Trump. Trump did these things, and that's key, right? To get people to who cares why you're here? Like, who cares what ignited you? Since you're here, focus on the right things. Don't come here with a nasty woman sign, take 25,000 selfies, go home, and wait it out for 8 years. You have to be, and then as soon as a Democrat comes into office, afraid, everything's fine again, right? That's what happened under Obama, and now Trump is being, they removed the mask off of America, and people are surprised. And everything she listed there, every issue of state sponsored and state violence were things that got worse under President Obama. Like, they got worse under President Obama. They were either them, or because he didn't do anything to curb them, like, in any real way. So you can't have a conversation about the prison industrial complex and not bring up the fact that Hillary Clinton takes money from private prison industry. Like it's about doing what Angela Davis does, and she's an obvious professional organizer and professional activist, getting that energy to the right places, not feeding into misinformation. So that's the difference between what I would say Bernie Sanders did at his town hall and what Angela Davis here did. She steered people to the right. She understood why people were there, and she steered them to the right causes, because she's trying to channel that anger into productive energy, productive areas, and productive spaces, without actually engaging in basically Democratic propaganda.
Yeah, and I should note that she is not a Democrat, Angela Davis. She's actually, according to Wikipedia, she's a member of currently of the Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism, and she was previously part of the Communist Party. So she is very far away from the DNC and David Brock crowd. One thing that she did mention that is not getting...
She's not a Democrat, but she supported Hillary Clinton in the primary.
Yeah, she did, and that was, and she got flack for it, and then that's why I knew there continues to be some mixed feelings about anyone that really signed on to the whole "I'm with her" crowd. But what can you do? Besides choose to ignore her or listen. What she did during the primaries, or what anyone did during the primaries, I don't think should necessarily completely cancel out their life's work. But before you comment on that, and I'm sure I just created a whole list of haters for myself. But
no, people are allowed their vote. Like that's the thing. Like no one said. No, people weren't. The only people who said you were not allowed your vote during the primary were basically the DNC, right? And so individual people who voted for Clinton in the primary or had their opinions expressed prior to the end, I'm fine with them. It's fine. The only I have issues with structures and the people who support those structures. Angela Davis has allowed her opinion, and yes, her opinion is worth more because of her number of followers, but she herself did not cause the DNC to try to rig an election. She wasn't. I mean, her article was a bit of a finger wag at those people, a slight finger wag at those people who wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, which I would say is,
it's her opinion. It's what it is.
It's her opinion. It's her opinion. My opinion would be okay. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the only other thing I wanted to bring attention to, not to change the subject, because it's not getting nearly enough attention, at least not yet, and I'm afraid it won't until it's quite possibly too late or enough damage has been done, is Standing Rock. She did mention them in the beginning of her speech, and during the inauguration, as soon as Trump got back in, I don't even know if it waited for Trump to actually take the oath. Standing Rock, the protesters, and the people camped out began to face all the tactics that we previously saw from from law enforcement in North Dakota. That was my brief comment. I'm gonna try to find some content to put on screen for those that may not have heard about it, but I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Violence at Standing Rock has escalated, and it's been steadily escalating over the past few weeks, and it's just part of this larger. People have been so focused on Trump that a lot of things have gone to the wayside, and that's why Angela Davis was so important there, because she's trying to refocus people on the things that actually matter. And Trump is just another person in the White House. Yes, he's dangerous, obviously, probably more dangerous than any other person might have ever been, but he's just another person. And there are systems and structures that exist within for the president that are going to, mitigate him the damage he can do. And so we have to avoid letting him distract us from the machinations of the Democrats and other people in Congress. He's a very convenient scapegoat, and that's why when people were saying that he's going to, but maybe not in the way you hope. Like he might just unify the left back under the Democratic Party. Trump might breathe new life into the Democratic Party. And that would be a problem. And I don't mean new life insofar if they're going to change their ways. I mean new life insofar people are going to be so afraid of Trump again that they will give the Democratic Party another chance. It's like when you break up with a girl and you can't find a new girl for over 2 months and you think about getting back with her. But she's a scumbag. Or I guess boy or whatever you're into. The Democratic Party is in a lot of ways don't hit up your ex on the rebound, and that's what the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party is your scumbag ex who you get nostalgic for because it's hard out there, and it is hard out there, but it's not that hard.
So the video I'm about to play is about a minute long, and there are some pictures as well. But this was actually from January 18th, so last Wednesday, and indeed before the inauguration. This is Standing Rock.
You good? Yeah. Come this way! Come this way! I can't breathe! Them fuckers almost got me! Get him! Get him!
And that's the direct result of the Obama presidency, right? That's not really the direct result, but that's.
Yeah, and it's we heard silence out of the Obama administration, and I'm curious whether we'll just see silence from Trump and the activity worsen, because it's definitely not going to become less, or if Trump will actually bash the protesters and put down the people that are standing up there.
It's just so there are so many. It's a very difficult time right now because there are so many ways in which this could go. Right, there are so many ways in which America can move. Either it can move further to the right, or I don't think that's the case though. We can't really get further to the right. I mean, we could, but not legitimately. Or we could go back towards, we could become nostalgic for neoliberalism, become nostalgic for Obama, become nostalgic for, what if Clinton had won? It's well, things would still be pretty bad. Or we can we can have a true progressive revolution. And so, but there are so many enabling, though my opposition to the Democratic Party is that there are so many they have so many enablers, right? They have so many enablers right now, both in the media and within the party, who are basically, and also the rank and file Democrats who are out there protesting as well with Clinton propaganda, who are basically telling them, you don't have to change, just save us from this. Like save us from this. And this, and looking at these pictures, it's like this is what they're asking for us to go back to. Right? This is what was happening, or rather, this is what was happening under President Obama. This is what he refused to comment on. This is what he was doing. And a large portion of Americans are okay with that if it just means we don't have Trump. But this right there, what you see on the screen, that's fascism. That is the public, what is ostensibly a public peacekeeping force, the police, using violence on the citizenry to protect corporate interests. That's fascism, but it's not fascism because it's not Trump. And hopefully people can recognize how intellectually dishonest that is at the end of the day. But if you watch the DNC debate with Keith Ellison, it wasn't even a debate. It was like just watching a bunch of friends talk about why they're so great. And that's such a good example of the issue with the Democratic Party. it's like they have their tokens and they have the illusion of diversity. The Democratic Party at the highest levels, and even at the the medium level, is the illusion of diversity. Like they have, we have women, we have blacks, we have African Americans, we have Latinos, we have LGBTQ community. We're in favor of all things, but we're all rich, and we sit around talking about how great America is because it's led to us being rich. And so it's this illusion of diversity that makes them very, very hard to change, because they feel as though everyone's being represented, because they have they have all the identity factors, or more, all of the most, I can't think of the word, most superficial identity factors represented with the Democratic Party and its elite. So they feel as though they are actually engaging in valuable discourse, but they aren't. Diversity in the Democratic Party is entirely token. And so, going back to your earlier point about, like, do we really need to have, as part of the equation for how do we defeat Trump, do we really have to be vocally anti-Democrat? And this answer is yes, we do. We have to be vocally anti-Democrat insofar that we have to explain to people that the Democratic Party is not the solution to these problems. They are not. They are just another. They're just a precursor to them, right? I keep saying that they are the status quo, and they are what gave us Trump. And so we have to not demonize them, but inform people of their culpability in this. We have to explain to people that, look, we understand that you're afraid of Trump, that Trump is something we have never had in this country before, but the Democrats cannot help you with this. They simply can't. Not only can they not, they have no real interest in helping with it. They have no real interest in fighting racism. They have no real interest in fighting sexism. They have no real interest in dealing with Standing Rock in a measured way. They simply have a lot of pretty words, they have memorized the intro to sociology, intro to Africana studies, intro to women's studies course material, and they remember the words, but they are empty promises. Like the intersectionality of the Democratic Party is a joke. Their economic policies, as it relates to the poor, are overburden people of color, women, anyone who is not basically rich white males. Like the Democratic Party it's where progressivism goes to die. And the reason why it's where progressivism goes to die is because it becomes very easy to pretend like you have diversity within the Democratic Party, simply because you're not as bad as Republicans and because you have a lot of brown faces. Not a lot of brown faces, but more brown faces than you'd have in the Republican Party. But even Sean King pointed this out on Twitter. It's just like, for all the talk about diversity with the Democratic Party, Democratic senators don't even have a diverse staff.
Yeah, it's there's a lot. We've got our work cut out for us, but I think it's something that's still very, very, very doable. And I just urge people not to give up. I'm actually going to look for what the end of that AJ Plus clip was showing, was that the CEO of Energy Transfer Partners, he donated like $100,000 to the Trump Foundation or something to that effect. I'm trying to see if I can find the audio that was leaked of him just a few weeks back.
Let's engage with the audience. Let's engage with the audience, and because we have some comments. Andy D or Andeed said 100% we must dismantle tokenism parading its intersectionality from the left, but I'm also not going to take that identity politics accusation from the right that is founded on the Southern strategy. It's like, well, that's absolutely true, Andy. I am not anti-identity politics. That I think a lot of people on the channel are more against it than I am, but I think that it's important to engage with why people are where they're at in terms of their prescriptions for society and what they view as problem within society. My issue with identity politics is just, as you pointed, like it's tokenism. My issue with identity politics is when people don't engage with the entire identity, right? When we engage with only one small facet of someone's identity, and we leave out class, we leave out geographic location, and we great at doing it, insofar that what they'll do is they'll bring rich, like urban black lawyer onto MSNBC and say, we have our black person here to speak to you about black issues. And it's like, well, it denies the multiplicity of experiences, right? The Democratic Party and the mainstream media in general is very good at denying the multiplicity of any identity. Insofar as they love to promote narratives from people of one identity that challenge the status quo the least. But the way in which identity, she's right. I mean, Andy is right though. Identity, the critique on identity politics started as part of attack on basically the civil rights movement. And Michael Stapleton said, I hate the Democratic Party. I don't hate anybody, man. Well, I do hate some people, but not the Democratic Party. And he wants a list of things that I like. I like food. I like cats. I like working out. I like not doing 10-hour marathon streams because then I run out of things to talk about. I like horror movies. And I occasionally enjoy video games.
I was on mute while Brandon thinks about other things he likes so that he can answer his fan mail. I'm going to play this. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but because it's about 10 minutes long, I'll give you the link in case anyone missed this from earlier in December. But this is the, while we're on the Standing Rock topic, this is the CEO at a meeting, and it was leaked. This is courtesy of Sean King.
And, we now are going into a transition where we're going to have a new president of the United States, which, who gets it. He understands what we're doing here, and we fully expect that as soon as he gets inaugurated, his team is going to move to get the final approvals done, and we'll begin to put capital across Lake Hawaii. It's about a 64-day drill that we have left. Like I said, we drilled on both sides of the river up to the point where we actually touch federal lands, but we need about 65 days up there in cooperation with the weather. I think the sentiment has changed in here. In the people of North Dakota, Joey Mahmood and I were up there yesterday in Grand Ruckle. We met with some of the officials in North Dakota. We met with the National Sheriff's Association. People are tired of this. They're tired of seeing what's going on in their community. And I think that the tide has turned and people are understanding what a great project this will be for the state of North Dakota. That came right out of the governor's mouth. He's very much in favor of this thing. So I think we're off and running on DAPL. I know that everybody in this room has had to deal with protesters. Everybody in this room has had to read on social media the misinformation that's out there. It's not fair. We feel like that, keeping our head down and doing what we do best, which is put this pipeline in the ground, is the best thing we can do. We never stop doing that. A lot of times people say to me, and I'd like to answer this question more directly, is why don't we just immediately answer back every time something is stated wrong about the company and what we're doing. And you have to understand, and I didn't really understand this until I got kind of deep into it, this is not really about water, and this is not about environmental activism, and it's nothing more than that. These are people that are pushing to keep all fossil fuels in the ground at every angle. And make no mistake, this is an event that they're using to raise lots and lots of money. If they can create a cause and they can create a lot of publicity, which they've clearly done here, it's an avenue for that group to raise money, not only to fight us on this project, but to fight all projects, infrastructure projects like this in the United States. So we'll continue to fight through this thing, but please be confident in this company. We're going to get this thing through in short order. We couldn't be more confident of that fact, and look forward to going through this thing in the spring of next year. Thanks so much for having me. I think.
So yeah, that was that was only a portion of the recording, but essentially, and at times it was hard to understand certain things he said, but he basically said that Trump's all for it. They've spoken with law enforcement and the governor, and they're all for it. And he tries to create the narrative that this is all about creating buzz around keeping fossil fuels in the ground, and of course that's part of it, but there's much, he even clearly at one point said this isn't about Native Americans. And to say that this isn't about indigenous people is just complete bullshit. Excuse my language.
Yeah, so, so I think we're going to call it a night after this, right? Because we don't really have much.
Yeah, no, we're going to.
So I just want to address one of the last questions I saw in the chat room. It was, what do I think the worst case scenario for a Trump presidency is? So, I mean, despite all of the talk of, Russia taking over America or Red Dawn type or nuclear winter, what I would say the worst, most likely case scenario is that the Democratic Party convinces everyone to go back to the way things were right before Trump, and the Republican Party convinces everybody that Trump was an anomaly within their party and that they've learned their lesson, and convinces everybody that people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Karate Chop Man, Chop Master Onion, what is his name? John Kasich are actually viable politicians. And so I think that's the problem. I think the worst case scenario is that Trump is not actually markedly worse from a structural standpoint and economic standpoint, but he's presented as worse by both sides, so that in 2020 they can just go back to doing things the way they did in 2000, right before. And we continue on a slow decline because let's be very clear, we've been on a slow decline since the 60s, and Trump might be a sharp turn downward, but he didn't change the trajectory. He's just a more rapid deceleration. And so I would say that's my worst case scenario when it comes to Trump. Maybe it's not as grandiose as some people's, but it's just like, I feel like people are just going to use this as an excuse to beg for the yoke of the status quo.
Yeah, I concur. So yeah, we're going to start to wrap up. Do you have any closing thoughts going forward?
Well, thank you for joining us over the past 3 days. I'm sorry if today was a bit more measured. As you can see, measured is a nice word for like mediocre in quality. But as you can see, me and my producer David are both quite tired from the past 3 days. I'm sure you guys are just as tired of hearing us speak as we are of talking. Ben will be back on Monday, I believe.
Hopefully, I know he's he should be. They all should be traveling today back from DC. So hopefully he's back and able to get into the studio to return.
Well, if Ben is not back on Monday, Nick will be doing a show on Monday. Noah will be back definitely on Wednesday, and I will be having my show on, I believe. And so, closing thoughts. It's been a crazy couple months, and I think that now it's not over yet, obviously, because we still have the confirmation hearings, and that's going to be a hoot. But, I'm always bad at closing thoughts. Let me think. It's been a very frustrating couple months. It's been a very frustrating couple years. And I just hope people can direct their energies in the right places. And that's why I'm going to continue to do what I do, because I want people to be able to hear a counterpoint to become a very, very, not only a centrist mainstream media or like rather Democratic establishment mainstream media, but in a lot of ways, the independent media has gone a little bit the way of the Democratic establishment as well, if they haven't gone completely crazy. So hopefully we can continue to do that.
Terry in the comments, I think she was responding to whether or not they're tired of hearing our voices, and she said that they wouldn't be here if they were, so much appreciated. Brandon's voice is better than mine. That's why I produce. But I would say that I agree. I think that it's been a crazy period, and I think that my hope is that the next 4 years are not any less crazy, but that it's in our favor, that we can sort of push back significantly.
Have a good evening, and thank you for joining us, everybody.
And as Brandon said, there will indeed be a special episode of the Takedown with Nick tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. So definitely watch out for that. And that's it. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everybody. Have a good day.